残酷な天使のように少年よ神話になれ青い風が今胸のドアを
Evangelion is a show about giant robots fighting monsters, right? Hell no, but if you think that's the story, then you've barely scratched the surface. Beneath all the explosions, the mechs, the chaos, lies a nightmare about trauma, isolation, and existential dread. Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the most iconic, layered, and profoundly disturbing anime I have ever watched. At first, it may seem like an action-packed story about a post-apocalyptic world and its biomechanical guardians, the Evas, but scratch the surface and you'll find a dark, unsettling narrative full of psychological horror, loneliness, and the terror of human existence itself. The horrors of the human mind and the crushing weight of societal expectations. In this video, we'll explore just how terrifying the world of Evangelion really is, and how much of its horror stems from the character of Asuka. Without further ado, let's talk about it. So, let's quickly set the stage. The story of Neon Genesis Evangelion is set in a world after the mysterious event called the Second Impact, which has nearly wiped out all of humanity. Now, a new global threat emerges, a group of creatures called angels, whose sole purpose seems to be the destruction of humanity. In this dystopian world, the organization NERV is tasked with stopping the angels, and they use massive biomechanical entities known as Evangelions to fight them. The series protagonist, Shinji Ikari, is reluctantly recruited to pilot one of these Evas. Alongside him are Rei and Asuka, two other younger pilots, each dealing with their own deep psychological trauma. What begins as a seemingly simple fight the monster plot quickly evolves into a chilling, philosophical exploration. Their ultimate fate mirror the existential terror that runs throughout Evangelion. But before we step into Asuka's horror, I like to touch on the Evangelions themselves, because at first glance, they look like a giant humanoid mech, but that's how they trick you. That's the lie NERV wants you to believe. But let's strip away the armor. Let's break open the metal shell and reveal what's underneath. An Evangelion is not a machine. It is a living organism, as we all know. Each Eva is a biological flesh and blood creature, a grotesque, mutated being that has been forcefully shackled inside of a mechanical suit. They have muscles, bones, and nerves. They have regenerative abilities like living creatures. They are capable of independent thought and movement, and they feel pain. But the most horrifying part, they were never meant to even be piloted. The armor you see, that's not for protection. It's a cage. It's restraints designed to suppress their true nature. Because when the Eva loses control, it stops being a weapon. It becomes something else entirely. It becomes a monster. There is something inside the Eva, and it's not just wires and circuits. It's something else. Something human. Eva 1, the purple machine piloted by Shinji Ikari, is one of the most terrifying of them all. That's because this Eva is a clone of Lilith, and not a clone of Adam like the rest of them. And I'd like to add that inside every Evangelion, at the center of its chest, there's a glowing red spear. And at first, it looks like just another mechanical part, something built into the Eva's design. But it's not. This red core is the beating heart of the Evangelion. More than that, it's where the soul of the pirate's mother is stored. Each Evangelion requires a soul to function. Without one, it would just be an empty husk, basically. And so, in order to bring the Evas to life, NERV needed sacrifices. The souls of the pilot's mothers were ripped away from their bodies and sealed inside the Evas. Shinji's mother, Yui Ikari, is trapped inside Eva 1. When Shinji enters the entry plug and syncs with Eva 01, he feels something strange. He feels warm, he feels safe, he feels like he's being held. And that's because he is. So every time that Shinji enters this plug, every time he syncs with the machine, quote unquote, he is fusing with his own mother's soul. Think about that for a moment. The warmth he feels inside the cockpit, that's his mother holding him. The sense of security when he's in sync, that's her whispering to him. And when the Eva goes berserk, when it moves on its own, when it screams, when it tears apart the enemy like a starving animal, that's not a machine going out of control. That's his mother waking up. That's her protecting her child at any cost, even if it means ripping through flesh, even if it means eating another living creature, even if it means killing. Eva 1 is a mother who refuses to let go. And that's why it breaks the rules of physics. That's why it moves when it shouldn't. Because it's not a robot. It's a grieving, furious mother trying to keep her son safe in the only way it knows how. And when an Eva goes berserk, we finally see what an Evangelion truly is. Shatters in an instant. Asuka starts off as a self-proclaimed ace, the best Eva pilot, full of arrogance and confidence. But this is a mask, where Evangelion's horror becomes deeply personal. Asuka's backstory is horrifying because it's real-world horror, not just sci-fi elements, no mechs, just pure human pain. Her mother was a brilliant scientist, but an experiment involving Eva Unit 02 went horribly wrong. Her mother's mind became fractured. She lost touch with reality. She believed the doll was Asuka, while ignoring the real Asuka. Asuka, desperate for her mother's love, tried everything to get her attention, but nothing worked. And then, her mother hanged herself. But the most horrifying part, Asuka was the one who found her body. Imagine being a child and finding your mother's corpse, knowing she chose to die instead of being with you. That is the trauma Asuka has been running from her entire life. One of the most famous and uncomfortable scenes in Evangelion is the elevator scene. 2 minutes of silence between Asuka and Rei. Asuka is furious at Rei, blaming her for everything. Rei, always emotionless, she barely reacts. The silence stretches until Asuka snaps.
I am not a doll.
You are! You do anything you're ordered to, don't you? You'd kill yourself if your commander told you to, wouldn't you?
Of course.
That moment destroys Asuka. Why? Because that's exactly what her mother did. She replaced Asuka with a doll, and for the first time, Asuka is forced to face the truth that she's been avoiding. Maybe she is replaceable too. Maybe she doesn't matter, and maybe her mother was right to leave her. This is not just an awkward scene. This is horror. By the time we reach the last few episodes, Asuka is completely broken. She isolates herself, refusing to eat or leave the house. She sits in a bathtub for a few days, unresponsive. Her mind is filled with voices from her past, haunting her. Humanity has been wiped out, dissolved into a sea of LCL, a formless existence where all minds are one, where individuality has been erased. Asuka, she lies beside him, Shinji, still breathing, still alive. She's the last other person. This should be a relief, but for Shinji, not so much. Shinji says nothing. He doesn't speak, he doesn't explain his actions, he just reaches out and wraps his hand around her throat. Why does he do this? Why? After everything, after surviving the apocalypse, after all the battles, the betrayals, the pain, why does he reach out in violence instead of comfort? The answer is in their parallel lives. The moment he strangles Asuka, not out of hatred for her, but because she represents the deepest and most personal fear he has, the fear of being truly alone, even with someone else still alive. But Asuka, she doesn't fight back. She doesn't scream. She doesn't resist. She just stares at him. And then, disgusting,